Hi, everyone. I wanted to talk about a signal that I think is really important right now. The real AI race isn't about models or chips, it's about how markets, policy, and trust are reorganizing technology into a battle between ecosystems. And to understand this, we need to start with contrast because the world is not converging on a single model for how AI should be built, governed, or adopted. It's diverging into a battle between two holistically different ecosystems. And that divergence is not accidental. The United States is taking a market led, unilateral approach to AI. And the logic is consistent with how the US has historically exercised power. Markets determine winners, innovation is commercially driven, and access to critical technologies is governed by sovereign policy. Export controls, licensing regimes, and sanctions are not side effects. They're treated as instruments. This position was made explicit at the United Nations. In response to calls for global AI governance, Michael Kratsios, then US Chief of Science and Technology Policy, stated, "We totally reject all efforts by international bodies to assert centralized control and global governance of AI." From Washington's perspective, this is not obstruction, it's protection, because America's global power rests heavily on two pillars: the dollar's primacy and leadership in foundational technologies. Binding international governance over AI would constrain both. So, markets lead, policy controls access, and alignment is enforced through unilateral sovereign authority. Meanwhile, China is articulating a different response. When Premier Li Qiang addressed the United Nations General Assembly, he stated, "It is important to remove digital and AI divides and speed up technology transfer and knowledge sharing so that innovation-driven development can truly benefit the world as a whole." This was not abstract language. China is signaling publicly a strategic response, and the reasoning is pragmatic. China understands that once access to technology becomes conditional, revocable by policy, subject to sanctions, or dependent on geopolitical alignment, market adoption is no longer reliable. And when markets are no longer reliable, systems must be redesigned. This is where sovereign, non-revocable technology stacks, like More Threads, have entered the picture. But an important clarification must be made here. Irrevocability by itself does not guarantee adoption. Trust does. A sovereign stack will only scale if other sovereign states and regional blocs believe that the governance is genuinely multipolar, decision-making is not dictated by largest users, and responsibility is shared, not centralized. Without that trust, irrevocability actually becomes another form of dominance. So China emphasizes collaboration and shared governance, not because it's altruistic, but because legitimacy in a multipolar world fundamentally depends on it. At this point, it becomes clear that the AI race is no longer about individual companies. It's about ecosystems. And those ecosystems are shaped as much by governance and policy as the technology itself. This divergence is now also visible in capital markets. Capital does not chase growth alone. It prices trust, trust in regulatory environments, trust in governance stability, trust in policy predictability. And to be clear, the United States remains the global leader here. US capital markets are still the deepest, most liquid, and most trusted in the world. That has not changed. What has changed is how the technology risk is evaluated. Capital is beginning to account more explicitly for policy exposure. The scale of capital allocation on the STAR market in support of fully integrated sovereign stacks like More Threads is not because the market sees simple bet on China technology over US technology. It's because capital is being allocated to price the risk of revocability. So when market is no longer just asking whether the company is the best technology, but whether that technology can be restricted, revoked, or turned off, it's signaling something very different. And this is where the More Threads example is useful. It's not being positioned as a market leader or as a replacement for NVIDIA, but as a hedge against revocable risk. In other words, some capital is being allocated not to outperform technically, but to insure against policy and governance constraints. That distinction matters. In zooming out, we can see regional strategies forming as well. ASEAN is increasingly beginning to operate as a power bloc. Europe prioritizes governance and ethics, emphasizing safety over speed, which makes it regulatory safe, but often stifling for innovation. Russia is constrained commercially, so it routes AI development primarily through the state and security apparatus. China positions itself as an architect of multipolar infrastructure, and the United States maintains that markets will decide, while access to US developed market leaders remains policy control. These are not ideological accidents. They're rational responses to a fragmented global environment. This is the global stage being set. One model prioritizes market leadership backed by unilateral policy control. Another seeks adoption through multipolar governance and shared responsibility. Capital markets are beginning to reflect this divide, not by abandoning US-led systems, but by acknowledging that a parallel option is emerging. The AI race is no longer only about technological superiority. It's about trust, governance, and long-term accessibility. And in moving into 2026 and beyond, we will likely see markets and sovereign states more explicitly price the risk of revocability. So let's keep watching for those signals.